Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Dude.
Hello.
How are you, my friend?
I am good. You okay?
Oh, magic.
Super duper magic. That's nice.
How's your weekend, brother?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
What did you get up to?
What did I do this weekend? It was me lad's birthday this weekend, so we had a little man weekend. So we went to watch, because he's big into his rugby. So we watched the Super League Grand Final at the weekend.
Where at? Or just at home together, or you actually went?
No, in Manchester at Old Trafford.
Bloody hell, dude!
Yeah,
What
and
an
then
adventure.
yeah, so we did that and stayed in a hotel on the Saturday. Then on the Sunday we went to the Arnold Classic in the NEC.
Oh, really?
On the way back, so it was like a proper like lads weekend of like manly stuff.
Mate. How was the Arnold Classic?
That was brilliant. It's such an experience, like seeing all these sort of people, because like we saw like the Stoltman brothers and Ronnie Coleman and people like that. And me lad didn't know who they were, but the size of some of the blokes who go there, Jesus Christ! Like I've seen obviously a lot of fit big people in my time, but they're on another level, like the proper bodybuilders and things like that.
Yeah,
It's absolutely mental. And then it had like little bits around, so it had like a CrossFit event going on. There was like a strongman little competition, a disabled strongman competition, which was amazing to watch.
wow.
And loads of little bit of MMA and all that. So it was it was 30 quid a ticket or something.
Is that all it
Really
was?
good. Yeah, for an adult. So and he was even less. I mean, although he's taller than me, but he's only 17, so he got a kid's ticket. It was even sort of less than that. So it was great.
Mate, that's
Great
awesome.
experience.
They are a great event. So I remember I've been at the Body Power many years, effectively the same thing, you know, that they'd ran for years on end and competed in the strongman competitions there a few times. And yeah,
Oh wow, okay.
the people that you see marching out from the depths of their own dungeons and the sizes and measures of people is a crazy, scary old world. And yeah, especially when you see people like Ronnie now. And
Oh man, it was that was a horrible thing actually, because he's not in a good state, is he? It was
no,
it's not a great. That's the only thing, because all of them they all look like hunched and limping, and they don't look. It's not a healthy fitness being a strongman, is it? Really, on your body, it's a
or a bodybuilder, to be
yeah,
brutally
well, yeah,
honest
exactly,
with you.
yeah, and that's inside as well, isn't it? Like your organs and everything get
Yeah, and
fucked.
that's why I always think of it a bit like, and I say it having been there, and I say it with absolute respect, because it takes such a, I always say it takes a massive amount of discipline, but
Mm.
actually, as I've learned myself, it's more of a torture, to be
Yeah,
honest, because it's not as though you couldn't not do it. You know
no,
what I mean? It's a bit like you don't have to motivate yourself to do any of it. It's almost you can't stop.
yeah, I can imagine. I imagine as well, it's the competition. So you look at one guy and he's a bit better in one department, whether that's sort of physically or in terms of
Mm,
superficially, or in an event or something. And you think, well, I've
mm.
got to do that to keep up with him, and that's. And I'm not excusing it, but that's going back to the cycling and Lance Armstrong and all that. And 80% of the riders are on sort of performance enhancing drugs. I'm not condoning it, but at the same time, they must look at everyone thinking, I know he does it. There's no way I'm going to beat him, so I've got to do it. And it's the same sort of thing with training and pushing yourself to a limit, innit? You end up doing stuff you probably wouldn't normally do,
It
but you
is when you
think,
get
I've got
into
to
those
keep up.
realms. It's almost becomes an exchange, and it's not even a knowing exchange when you're
Mm,
doing it. I don't think it often, unless you've got a colossal amount of money behind you, whereby you really do, able to get your blood work done every month, and you're able to balance everything, and you're doing a lot of stem cell treatment or growth hormone treatment on the joints. But even if you were doing all of that, which I would argue 99% are not, because
mm.
we just, I don't think massively educated people tend to get attracted
No,
to
no.
that thing. And I'm not saying everyone in there is stupid. Some people become very educated, and they're certainly very disciplined individuals. But what people tend to go into those areas are people like myself when I was doing those sorts of things. People with a massive crack in their mental self-perception.
Right, okay.
There's almost a real fracture in what you think you need to do to gain acceptance for yourself, or
Mm,
especially something like bodybuilding, because it's such an elusive metric. There's no real winning or losing, and people say, "Oh, obviously there is." People go, "Yeah, but it's not like if you lift more than me, you win." Okay, that's
Yeah.
obvious. Bodybuilding is just, meh. I think that he looks better than he does,
Yeah, yeah. It's
and
quite a
it's
subjective ruling,
subjective,
isn't
and
it?
it's
Yeah.
so. And I never did bodybuilding, but that I cannot, I cannot imagine
No,
what
it's a
that
weird
does.
competition, isn't it? It's like it's like a real life version of like Instagram competition, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's
It
like
is, yeah, and
you're
it's
looking at
almost who's
something, you have
willing to
no idea
trade
how
as
they've got
much of
there.
their
Yeah,
life, who's
yeah,
willing to trade more of their life than somebody else. Because
yeah,
Ronnie, if you've ever heard Ronnie speak
yeah,
about
yeah,
his training, he says, do you have any regrets? He says, not lifting heavier or
yeah.
not going further or something like that, and you think, fuck me.
I suppose it's like that mentality of, the same as sort of boxers, and it's that little bit that they haven't got in their head of like a what if, and they haven't got that because they just want, like the thought of getting punched in the head for a living. It doesn't sound appealing to me at all. Yet you think, why do the people keep getting them when they're hitting their 30s and 40s, thinking untold sort of damage, and they're still doing it? And but it's that. It's, if that's all they've known, that's where they get their buzz. That's where they get. I think that's where like a lot of people when they retire, a lot of them sort of turn to booze or turn to something like that because they can't. That was their identity. When you take that away, like they sort of look at themselves and think, God, what am I then? If I can't sort of be a bodybuilder anymore, if I can't be a boxer, if I can't be a footballer, it's their identity, isn't it? Gone.
Yeah, I think you're right when you use that word identity. That's a different one. So I think initially, yeah, people, that's where they get their buzz. But then when they make that up to be 90% of their personality,
Mm,
they think, who will I be if I am not this person anymore?
yeah,
And they know nothing else. And they almost need to keep perpetuating that image or that lifestyle or that person that they've manifested because that's all that they believe themselves to be.
yeah. And what they believe
Um,
other people think they're that guy, aren't they? They're the bodybuilder.
that's
They're
it.
known as that guy, and when that's
That's it.
gone, what are they might think? Well, I don't just want to be Steve. You know what I mean? I want to be Steve the something, which is quite a
Yeah, but even if you wanted to then be Steve the architect, to
yeah,
start with, you'll be Steve the shit architect.
yeah, yeah. It used to be a
And that
bodybuilder.
is
Yeah,
humbling because you used to be the greatest in the world at one thing, or you
yeah,
used to
yeah,
be highly respected at this one thing. I was watching a TV show recently, the Celebrity SAS Who Dares Wins thing, and Dwayne
yeah,
Chambers was on there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's quite sad, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, very sad, very interesting. Such a tortured man in a similar guise as to the fact that, sprinting and this elite athlete, and he was a fucking god. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus Christ,
Jesus,
he
yeah,
just looked absolutely incredible. And then he obviously
yeah,
got hit for doping and just never seemed to recover from it. And I mean, even now, what is he in his mid 40s, late
yeah, yeah.
40s?
He's still fighting it, isn't he?
And he's still fighting it. He's still just can't bring himself to be shit at something else.
Yeah,
He still sees himself as needing to recover from that or needing to make it right, or as he says, himself, his just whole world fell apart because
and it's
that was who he was. That's who he made
yeah.
himself to be.
And I thought the saddest thing about that is because at the time, when you sort of read things like that in the paper, like when it happens, you think, oh, it's disgusting, sort of ban him for life. And then when you get a bit older, you think he was like in his early 20s. He made a stupid mistake. He admits it. Yet he's got punished the rest of his life for doing something stupid when he was 20, 21. You think, actually, because like the first thing I said to me missus when we watched it was that if I was in charge of British athletics, I'd use him now. I'd make him go around the country and go to sports club, athletics clubs, and say I made a stupid mistake and fucked up my career. So don't do what I did. But because you could learn from him because he spoke really well, didn't he? I
He
thought.
was, yeah, very
And I thought,
articulate, great
why
voice,
don't
great
athletics
voice.
instead of sort of kicking them out and banning them from everything? I understand banning them from competition, but you could still sort of use them
Yeah.
as like a bee. You could still earn a living in my eyes, thinking how to teach people of what the routes to go down
Hmm.
and be an example of how sort of not to do things in a way when he had the world at his hands and he fucked it all up. But that's such an important sort of life lesson. You forget they're so young when they make these mistakes. They're just
Fucking
kids,
hell, mate.
really. The amount
Babies.
of pressure on
Fucking
them.
babies, yeah.
Yeah, and at the time you're like, oh, I fucking hate them, guys, disgusting. You think, oh, when you look back now, you think, oh, actually, I feel sorry for him a bit now.
Yeah.
It's
We
weird
did
how it
so
changed.
much stupid shit. I did so
Exactly.
much stupid shit. Just no one was really watching. No one
Yeah, exactly.
cared.
Yeah, yeah,
You weren't. It wasn't
yeah.
on a world stage. Today's episode was brought to you by our good friends at Wood Watches. We put so much thought into the people that we partner with on the podcast, and Wood Watches has been with us since the beginning. Now, they have 6 different collections now. In October, they brought out their new Fearless collection. Now, I've been speaking to some people in the past who have got that Wood watch for a specific occasion for something really smart, really classy. But the best thing about the Fearless collection is that it's built to be worn in active surroundings. Now, again, if you're unfamiliar with it, the massive core of all these Wood watches is the upcycling of firefighting materials. And the Fearless collection has got a 100-year-old British Bash firefighter helmet melted down and placed inside the crown of the watch. That's exactly the same as they have with all of their collections. But this one also features repurposed black fire hose. I myself went for the Valiant watch. I've had this for a couple of years now. Really nice. I've got it in the red strap. There's a whole range of payment options. Go over and take a look at them. Whether you're thinking of a retirement gift, you got something special to celebrate, or you have just started your emergency services career, go over and check them out. WilliamWoodWatches.com. The best way to support the podcast is to support our sponsors. So please take a click in the notes below. Now back to the show. Right, I wanted to get on to what we were talking about today, because talking about metrics and talking about performance and everything like that, today we're going to be talking a little bit around what gets measured gets done, and this aspect of measuring progress in fitness as a firefighter.
So, I mean, it's something I'm not passionate about, the wrong word, but it's something I really like to push with the people I work with, like in the service and people outside, whether it's on my program or whatever. It's taken away the focus from the fitness test, because I hate the way that it seems to be, and some brigades are better than others in that making that the focus, and that's all you need, and that should be the focus every year. And you get so many people who train for that test, where for me the test isn't overly relevant to the job, and it doesn't help you in your life, in your home life, being overall fit and healthy, which is obviously the long-term goal. So it's trying to move that focus off the fitness test, but using the job still as a way to measure your progress, because there's a million ways of doing it. And it's about building a bigger picture really that's going to reflect so much more in your everyday life, which is going to make you sort of live longer, live happier, being able to squat down and have a poo when you're 18 and stupid sort of stuff like that, which is so important.
It's not stupid. It's something that's very much in the forefront of my mind at the minute. Obviously, I'm currently recovering from tail tendon surgery. So the idea of squatting down ass to grass at the minute is just absolute god. That's just like, oh man, I can't imagine how much longer my right hamstring is than my freaking left hamstring at the minute, mate. Honestly, it's like, oh.
It looks so awkward, like the way it's bandaged up all straight as well. That looks
So it's in a splint currently, and I'm about a week and a half post surgery. It's come screaming into the forefront of my mind now, this aspect of longevity, and thinking, okay, whilst this was a freak accident, the way in which I've injured it, and I'm sure it will come to light how I injured it in the fullness of time, but it's really made me think even more about what do I need to adjust? What do I need? Because whilst it was a freak accident, there'll also be some contributing factors. And these metrics that we talk about and things that I'd focused on in the past were not necessarily things that achieving them would necessarily equal a fulfilling and long life. These were built around, strength disciplines and things that are just like residue from an old life, whereas I'm very much moving into more of a mindset of more functional fitness, because my body has been functionally strong for a couple of years now, but I realize now I want to take it down even more. I want to trim a few more kilos off the physique and rebuild the weapon into something that's a real fucking sharp blade.
I mean, we mentioned it a little bit earlier actually, but a really obvious side of that is any high impact or high, I don't mean also impact on the body, but impact in terms of like sort of gym impact as well. Things like sort of strongman and rugby players and anything like that, any sort of that discipline. It's very, very rare to see a retired member of that community who walks up really straight and looks really fit and healthy, when they've retired. And so it goes to show that you might train your ass off for a particular reason. You might be the fit for that particular task or that particular job than anyone else in the whole world, but the beating on your body takes such a toll, and it always comes to bite you on the ass when you're in your 40s and your 50s. It will come back and get you, which is why the focus, unless that's your job and that's your interest, and I'm not saying to not do that obviously, but the focus should be on a more like a fuller picture of fitness, really.
Mm.
Overall sort of body, and focusing a lot on movement and movement patterns and things like that, rather than just trying to sort of lift as heavy as possible and getting obsessed with the weights and as in like scales, and trying to beat your best time, best sort of distance. Obviously, if that's a hobby, then great, but it can override your overall health and fitness at that point. I mean, if
Yeah.
there's a few examples of, for even, sort of losing a bodybuilder, for example, you could be a world class sort of bodybuilder. We mentioned sort of Ronnie Coleman before, and he was a copper, wasn't he, a policeman?
Yeah.
And I can't believe that was an effective body for being a
Fuck no.
policeman. Because I'm
Dude couldn't
sure if,
fucking run.
exactly, as long as you didn't get within arm's reach, because obviously he could probably crush you with one hand. But as soon as you got out of a meter range, I can't imagine him sort of sprinting down the street and chasing a 16-year-old who's nicked a packet of crisps. I mean, it'd be terrible.
That's it.
Um, and the
And
same,
even
and
with the
the
firefighters, to be honest, I've always said, even though, we're up to whatever it is, 4 or 5 gold medals with the firefighter challenge stuff, the best firefighters physically, I think, are around that sort of 11 to 13 stone mark.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? There shouldn't be anybody up around my weight, my size, performing at that sort of level. I
mm,
think for people to be able to be sustainable in the job for far longer, and this is again something I'm becoming far more focused on, is I need to, focus more on those metrics of range of movement, around my body's ability to move itself, around more calisthenics, and really, involve myself in more things like swimming and running and maybe a little bit of wrestling and stuff like that again, just to get that more holistic feel to
mm.
fitness.
Yeah, and comparison sort of comes in there as well, because it's really hard to do. It's easy to say all this, but it's so hard. Generally, I mean, again, I'm sort of a generalise here, but it affects all ages. But it affects a lot of younger people, men and women. They're always constantly comparing themselves to other, and that could be a purely sort of physical thing, like your eyes across a gym and you're seeing a bloke or a woman who's in really good sort of shape, or they think is in really good shape,
Yeah.
and they think I want to be like that. So it's not as easy to say I don't want to do sort of any sort of physical work that's going to change my body shape,
Mm.
but it's understanding how that person, like the grass is always greener. It's the famous sort of saying that you might see someone who's in great shape, but you have no idea what is happening to their body. Sort of using a woman, for example, gets into great shape, or what is deemed as a great shape becomes a size sort of as a zero, or the stupid things that they do sort of nowadays, and they look sort of ripped, but they haven't eaten a carb for 4 days, like they've lost their periods, they got
Periods have stopped. Yeah.
no energy, they're not sleeping. Yet all they see on Instagram is a smiley, happy face saying, "Yeah, look how amazing I am. My life's sort of so great." So it's trying to shift that focus from other people, from other lives, and thinking, what do I need in my life for my job? To play around with my kids on the floor, to get up and down, without sort of moaning and groaning. To be fair, I do that every time I get off a seat. I'll make a noise, but it's and it's sort of being a bit more insular and thinking, what do I need and what is best for me? And it's easier said than done, and it can take it's a lot of trial and error, and and you go through sort of phases, because I'm it's like myself, we're going through phases of training all the time. Like a couple of months back, I got obsessed with CrossFit type training, so I got into that a little bit. But then I've just got a place in the London Marathon for next year, through
Congratulations, brother.
through the Firefighters charity, actually. So that should be good. So now, obviously, my focus now, I'm reading loads of books and articles and research into like sort of training for the marathon, which is it's not the opposite of CrossFit training or weight training, but obviously that isn't the primary sort of focus anymore. So, and it's okay to do that. It's okay to change. There isn't a right or wrong way to do any of this. And I think that's a message that we try and get across a lot. I think the both of us is everyone has done bits and bobs over their life, and none of them are wrong. But it's just trying to find that happy medium of doing something that you enjoy, doing something that's a challenge, but is equally you don't want to be doing yourself a detriment, especially in this job, because it's so varied, and the amount of like energy systems that we use, and the stress on the body on the job alone. We need to consider what type of training we're doing in and outside the job.
Yeah. So talk to me briefly about the marathon stuff. We've just had Mike McNabb and Ian. Ooh, Ian's last name escapes me. I apologize, but had just had them on the podcast about they ran the New York City Marathon in full
Oh,
fire
bro.
kit
Oh, blimey.
in
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
back in 2013 and 2014, and I thought, fucking
Right.
hell, That is really, really cool. And we had a brief conversation around training methods and training styles and stuff like that, and the factor of trying to do it in fire kit and
Mm.
why that was important to them. So talk us briefly through like your decision to go and do the London Marathon, and if you've had to sacrifice any part of your identity because you're going to have to change some of this training because potentially your physique won't remain as muscular as it is if you're going to train it for endurance now.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's a big old shift. However, in the last, I would say probably, well, I was going to say 10 years, but maybe sort of longer than that. It used to be sort of like if you wanted to run, then that's all you would do for 90% of the time is just run, 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 run. And obviously the bulk of it is getting sort of miles in your legs. However, there is a big emphasis on resistance training as well to complement that. Especially because I've run a couple of half marathons before, but this is the first time I've done a full marathon. I've just turned full for 40, which isn't old, but I feel a lot older than I did sort of 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So my biggest fear is not really the fitness side, to be honest, because I know I'll train sort of properly for it. I'll sort out a program, and that isn't the issue. My biggest fear is my body breaking down. And the biggest way to stop that happening, and that could be like your knees, your hips, your ankles, and things like that, and pull muscles and strains and things. Um, the biggest way to counteract that is through some sort of resistance training. Now, it won't be really heavy sort of lifts, and a lot of it will be body weight stuff and a bit of flexibility work and things like that. But there is still a mix of training. Where that sits for me at the moment, I do find that quite difficult. So by no means have I, I'm not completely sort of ripped. I'm like half the size that you are and things like that. So I don't lift stupidly heavy weights. However, for the last, as long as I can think, that has been the core of my training. So I've done other bits and bobs, a little bit of running, a little bit of rowing, blah blah. But the core of it has always been round weights. Now, mentally, that's quite hard to leave that because I think I don't know where I'll be in 6 weeks' time. I might have lost a little bit of weight and I might be a little bit sort of thinner than I actually want to be, even though
Yeah.
I don't ever look at myself and think I'm thin. But at the same time, I don't want to lose everything. But there can be a happy medium. I think for someone like yourself, for example, it might be a bigger shock because if you had to lose a lot of size, then that would be a bigger shock than me. Because, like I say, I'm not a massive bloke anyway, so
Hmm.
it's not such a big issue. But mine would be a mental thing because I tend to I'll do a program. I think it's a common thing for a lot of people. I'll do a program for 6, 8 weeks, and then my mind starts to wander, and I start to think, oh, I should be doing that. I haven't done that for a while. Then I start to add another couple of exercises on, then a couple more, then a couple more. Then a couple of weeks have gone by, and it's not the original program that I originally sort of
Yeah.
started. And that's where I think I'm going to have to try and be as strict as possible because obviously if you've got a target of trying to sort of lift 2 times your body weight in a deadlift, for example, that's a fixed number that you can aim towards, and you keep going and going and going, and you'll try the weight, and if you can't sort of lift it, then you drop it. Then it's a bit annoying, but you go again tomorrow. When I'm in the middle of the marathon, that's not really an option. Obviously,
Yeah.
I could stop, but I don't. My target is to get round. In as fast as possible without killing myself. But like I say, the main responsibility is to get round. So I need to find a way to completely flip my focus into
That's the difficult one.
into not trying to do it as hard and as fast as possible. It's to complete it and put in sort of things in my head and coping sort of strategies because I know it's going to be horrific in a way, but the feeling of crossing over the finish line obviously will be the complete opposite and probably end up sort of bawling my eyes out. But that's because it is a massive, massive challenge, and
Oh, it
so
is, mate. It's colossal.
yeah, at my age, and I'm not. I keep saying at my age, I'm not old, but I do think it changes. I think you can get away with a lot more when you're in your 20s than you can
You
when you're in
can,
your
yeah.
40s, and you can sort of blag a little bit and think, oh, I'll just sort of muddle through. Where I don't
Mm.
think once you
You've
reach
got more
30,
reserves,
35,
I think, to just
exactly,
bite
exactly,
into if you need them. Whereas the reserves, when you get into your 40s and stuff like that, are costly reserves because it's actually
definitely,
like, oh, my knee is actually starting to fuck up now, or my hip is
yeah.
starting to grind itself, or my back is really, really tightening up, and I can't just, or I feel as though I can't just grit it out. Whereas
Mm.
your bodies are much more pliable and forgiving when we're younger.
Yeah, definitely. But then on the flip side, you've got the reserves, you've got the mental reserves,
Yes.
which is a positive, obviously, when you're older because you've had a lot more experiences, whether that's through work, training, like things in your personal life. I think mentally you've generally got more sort of grit,
Hmm.
but it's just whether your body can keep up and doesn't sort of let you down by going, hang on, no, I can't actually do that anymore. Um, But I've got plenty of time to train, and that's the biggest thing as well. And whenever, because I've trained a few people for different events, whether it's the Firefighter Games or just sort of running events or other things, and it's just giving yourself plenty of time. So I've got, most training things for the marathon are 12 or 16 weeks, and I've obviously got sort of double that nearly.
Mm.
And I am going to start now in this really sort of slow way and sort of really prepare my body sort of properly, slow and steady, improving, improving, improving. What I don't want to do is like a crash course in 8 weeks, because that's when injuries happen, and that's the same with any sport. Like you want to give yourself a massive sort of run up, and it gives you a bit of leeway. So if you've got a holiday, or if you do have a little injury halfway through your training, if you've given yourself that bit of a buffer, then you've still got plenty of weeks. So it's trying to be as confident and progressive as possible, but start really slow and don't sort of rush anything.
Love it. Absolutely love it, brother. So just to recap on those metrics of success and how we should be looking at measuring our progress, what's the one or two takeaways in terms of how we should be thinking about it?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, and again, I've got a few that I use, but there isn't, it's not an exhaustive sort of list. But I'm not a big fan of the scales in general, because a lot of people go straight to numbers, and whether that's the weight you lift or scales and things like that, and times and distances. I'm not a massive fan. That obviously it's good to keep a track, and you need to. But on the flip side of it, you need to record stuff. You need to measure stuff, because you don't know if you've improved in that
Mm.
area. So there's a few things that I used to do. For example, I haven't got it actually on, since I moved sort of stations, but I used on the inside of me locker, I had all the distances written down in rowing and running and things like that I'd dip in and out of. So I wasn't particularly sort of training for them. It was for my own improvement really. So things like my 5k time, 10k time in rowing and running, etc. And if you're more into your weights, and you could have certain sort of body, like your core
Yeah.
sort of lifts, like your deadlift, squats and things, and then you just put a wang in your best time, and then you do it again in a few weeks later, and you see if you're getting better or worse, and is there a reason for that. But other ways of progress pictures, massive fan of, especially again as we get older, and especially for females, your body composition changes like throughout the month anyway. Without doing, if you didn't change anything in terms of your nutrition or your training, your body composition would change and your weight would change. So having like a regular sort of picture, and you can't always see yourself, because I'm a bigger sort of, I'm a big I look at my body and I think, oh God, I could do sort of so much more, which I think a lot of people sort of do that as well. But
Yeah.
because they see themselves every day, then you don't ever see any changes. So it sometimes takes a picture from a month ago to go, oh, actually I can, or ask your wife, your husband, your girlfriend, or whatever. Or it's hard to, your bloke at work won't give you an honest answer, because all he'll do is take the piss. But having, if you like sort of bump into someone in the street that you haven't seen for a couple of months, and they go, "Oh God, you've lost some weight," and that means loads more than your wife saying it, for example, because your wife is going to
Yeah.
say that. So progress pictures are great. Body composition measurements along with that. Again, I don't like people to get obsessed with things like that, because then they end up sort of putting a tape measure around their waist every single day, and it starts to become obsession. But again, it can be, especially in muscle building and things like that. Obviously, you need some sort of measurements around like your biceps, your
Yeah.
chest, your thighs, and things. Creating simple, repeatable drills, both in a gym sort of scenario, and on the fire ground as well. So you could actually get the drill ground assessment, for example, and not, obviously time it, but what you're going to do is you're going to do it, and then you start to, and you break it down into sections, say into quarters, because it sort of naturally falls into about thirds of different energy
Yeah.
systems and things, and you write how you felt on each one, and just give yourself a score out of 10 or whatever, for example. Keep it sort of dead simple, and do that again in a month's time. Again, really unofficial. You don't need a fitness advisor or be typically sort of measured, and do it again and see the areas which you felt better or worse than the last time. But the important thing is to keep it repeatable, because obviously there's no point having a test that you keep sort of tweaking each time, because it won't ever be the same. So,
Yeah.
so keep it the same. But it doesn't have to be the dual ground assessment. It could be a mini version of it. So you could say pick up a few sort of legs of hose for up and down for 20 meters, and you roll out a hose, you roll up a hose, and something like that, and roll out the hose reel jet wearing a BA set, and keep it dead simple, as long as it's repeatable. And the same in the gym. If you've got a little bit of a circuit that you do a certain amount of press ups, or a basic weight that isn't, you're not going for the weight, you're going for reps for time and things like that. And record how you feel for each exercise, or each sort of compartment of each exercise, whether it's cardio or weights or whatever, and do it again in a month's time, and see A, if your time's improved, and B, how you're feeling. Because if you break it down, then you'll know which area you might be like. If you improve your time, you might think great, or you might put on time, but you don't know whether that's in the strength element, in the speed element, in the cardio
Yeah,
element.
yeah.
So it's important to break it down.
I love
Sleep,
that.
sleep as well is amazing, and then smartwatches sort of nowadays are amazing. They
Mate,
track.
if they could sell sleep, it'd be
Oh
fucking
man, that is
illegal.
the key, and it's so
It would
hard.
be
It's
illegal.
so
It is
hard.
such a
Yeah,
performance enhancer. You
yeah,
gotta fucking hell, honestly. Oh my God. It's taken me probably 25 years to
yeah,
really, really come to terms with that. And I feel so bloody stupid.
yeah. And
You know
well,
what I mean? It's
I think
such a
that's the
game changer.
problem. Yeah, I
And
think
it's almost the eternal crux of our profession as well, because we're habitually interrupting it intentionally.
yeah, yeah, and it's 100% in our control. And it's one of those things where whether you've got an injury, or whether you're 18 or 108, is something that obviously there are things like if you've got a newborn baby and things like that, it's sort of out how you
Yeah,
control.
yeah, yeah.
But generally, if you've got the facility to sleep well and you can set your own bedtime and get up when you want, and obviously you've got to get up for work. What I mean is, it just depends. Like when, if you, it's such an important thing, and I think everyone's knows that. Everyone is told that. But exactly as you just said, it takes people years, and normally, again, you could be over 40 before you actually go, oh, actually, that's right. And where if you imagine if you were sort of in your 20s and competing or doing or training for a sport or something, and you actually sort of did the good sort of sleeping patterns and practices, you know that your performance would have probably improved by 10% easily.
Hmm.
And smartwatches are great for that, and they measure a lot of stuff. The how accurate they are is debatable. In general,
Yeah.
is the actual number. However, what I tend to use smartwatches for is the increase and drop. So it doesn't really matter what the number is, but it's measuring if it's gone up or down, basically. So don't overthink the
Yeah.
numbers. And smartwatches are great for sleep and obviously your heart rate and things like that. Another good one is your food diary. Now, a lot of people get obsessed with that and think, I'm not doing that, it's really complicated and things. And I don't mean to break it down in calories of everything you eat and protein, fats, and carbs. It's really important, depending on your goal. But if that's too sort of daunting, just look at it a dead sort of basic way and make a diary of what you've eaten for the last sort of week. Make sure you do it every day though, because everyone forgets. And all you're doing is you're counting, for example, like your portions of fruit and veg, how many sort of glasses of water, how many sort of takeaways you've had, how many beers you've had, and things like that. And then see if you think, be honest with yourself. And if you've eaten sort of one apple and had and you've drunk four nights a week, not saying to go cold turkey, just saying, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to drink for 2 nights for this week, and I'm going to make sure that I eat some fruit 3 times on this week as well.
Yeah.
And just give yourself small targets and slowly increase it. Don't think you've got to become a crazy sort of calorie counting sort of vegan, only eating hemp sandwiches every day, and and not ever drinking or having takeaways and chocolate. It's about breaking it in small, achievable goals, which sounds a bit sort of cheesy, but and that's all it is. So there's just a
No,
few
it
ways,
does,
but
mate. Yeah.
there's loads of ways really. It's just trying to look beyond numbers is the biggest thing, I suppose.
Love that. Because like you say, they're the big pieces of the puzzle rather than focusing on the minutia. I always say people major in minor things. Do you know what I mean? They get caught up in counting the tiny little calories and macronutrients and numbers of proteins and all that sort of stuff. Whereas it's usually the bigger pieces of the puzzle, like sleep, hydration, that will really be the big game changers
Exactly.
versus the 1 or 2% change you could get from adjusting, how many kind of grams of protein you have in a certain meal. You could get a 10 or 20% improvement on
Yeah.
your sleep or even just your range of movement, because actually that chronic shoulder pain that's causing you all these issues is only getting worse and worse as you focus on your bench press goal
Mm,
and you're making sure you're having enough protein shakes and all that sort of shit. But if you
yeah.
just spend a couple of weeks working on range of movement, doing some swimming and getting topside of your fucking sleep, you'd be astonished how quickly that'll clear itself up.
100%, yeah. I mean, a phrase that I use a lot is, which sounds pretty odd, is "there's no point polishing a turd." And what I mean by that is, if I had somebody the other day, he drinks sort of irregular. He quit smoking now, but he used to smoke up until about a month ago. He barely goes to the gym. He doesn't eat that great. And then he came to me and he said, "Is it worth getting the BCAA sort of a supplement?" And it was like there's so much that you can do
Fuck
before
me,
you
dude.
get to that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's exactly what I mean. Don't
You're looking at step number 34. Do you know what I
exactly.
mean? And you're not
And
doing
if at
steps 1,
all,
2, and
yeah,
3.
exactly. There's so much. What's the phrase? Like a low hanging fruit that you can get.
Oh
It's
yeah,
so
loads.
simple and free as well. Like it doesn't depend on the type of trainers you got or the gym membership. Should I join a big box gym or the CrossFit gym or whatever? There's so much you can do before you even get to that stage. You just got to be honest with yourself and sit down, sleep, basic nutrition, and again, like we say, you don't have to go sort of crazy, and just being active and on your feet. And it doesn't mean sort of running a marathon or doing anything sort of ridiculous. Just time on your feet, steps, those sort of things are so important because you'll find 99.9999% of people who are really fit in a particular sport, really strong, really fast or whatever, they do all those as a core every single day. They eat all
Mm.
right, they're active and they sleep well. That's the bare minimum. So if you're not at that stage yet, then don't overthink everything else. Do you know what I mean? It's all about a
Absolutely.
pyramid of trying to sort of build up the basics. And there's probably 100 things. There's probably not 100, but say there's 100
Yeah.
things that you could do. And then once you've got them down and you do them as routine, then you can fine tune it a little bit more. And there might be another sort of 50 things that you can do to fine tune it. And then you fine tune them. Then there's another 10, and then you start to get into really sort of a deep diving into stuff, but you can't jump a level. It don't work like
No.
that.
I think mastering the basics will get you to the end of the career. You haven't
Definitely,
even got to
100%.
worry about the rest of the stuff, to be honest
Yeah,
with you. I think you just need to master the basics and have a fixed, structured, repeatable pattern
mm.
for you to be able to do that and have enough self-awareness as to when you start wandering off the path.
And that's reflected in the job itself. So even away from the fitness side, like the amount of probationers that come in and get obsessed with the ins and outs of everything. You think just focus on BA, RTC, and get to used to like the core of the job and nail that down, and then slowly
Mm.
sort of build. Don't
Yeah.
overcomplicate
Just be a
stuff if you
really
need
good
to.
firefighter to start with. Just be a
Exactly.
really good fucking firefighter. All the stuff that doesn't even feel like it's part of the job. Get
Yeah.
really good at tidying up the watchroom.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
really good at mopping out the
Exactly.
bays.
Yeah.
Get really good at doing the station admin, doing all the station tests. Get really good at the scrub. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
really good at being
100%.
aware of, setting up for drills and stuff like that. Don't be the one that fucks all that up, but can be the person that tells you what pressure the cutters are at. No one gives a
100%.
flying fuck.
Yeah.
You're a shit firefighter. Be better at everything
Yeah.
else that makes you part of
100%.
this team, and then you can impress us with all your fucking technical knowledge.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much for this morning, mate. Always love our catch-ups. Really looking forward in a month's time to be able to tell you how I'm getting on with the knee, and also to hear how you're getting on with those first few runs, getting those miles
Yeah.
in the legs,
Yeah.
see how everything's going, and let's continue this journey, brother. I'm really excited to see what we're going to get into next time.
Yeah. Stuff. Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.
Beautiful, man. Send my love to the family. I'll see you
Will do.
soon.
You too. Take care.
The Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. Through a series of wide-ranging conversations celebrating those within our sector, we seek to encourage and support this incredible group of people. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield, and I speak with individuals from all walks of life who I sincerely believe can add value to or develop those who have chosen this life path. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening.